Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Deloitte AI Institute today for our session on reimagining the future of work with GenAI. My name is Tara Murphy, and I lead our thinking on the human implications of AI within Deloitte's human capital practice. While this event is a webcast, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of the lands that we are on today. Deloitte Canada has offices with representation across the country. We acknowledge that our offices reside on the traditional, treaty, and unceded territories of Turtle Island, which is still home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I also want to note that today the webcast is being recorded. It'll be available on our Deloitte AI Institute webpage, and when you view it after the session, you can view it in any language of your preference. Last note I'll make before we dive into the topic is that I'm really excited to share our global point of view on generative AI and the future of work is going to be published in the next few hours on our global Deloitte AI Institute website, and the link will be shared with you as well. Okay, let's dive in. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about. When we think of generative AI, what does it mean for human work? I believe we stand at a threshold of a new era in the evolution of human work, an era that might be as transformative of industrial revolutions in the past. When we think to the past and we think of these revolutions, it's not about introducing new machines or new technology. They were also fundamental shifts in work, society, and daily life. These shifts brought new skills, new industries, and transformed economic landscapes in some nations. Similarly, generative AI isn't just a set of tools. I believe it's a paradigm shift in how we approach problems, how we create solutions, and how we imagine the future of work. I also believe that it's about enhancing human potential by augmenting our intelligence. I'm not talking about replacing humans with this. Ultimately, GenAI will create capacity for humans at work. This capacity might increase our efficiency. Maybe it will allow for the 4-day work week and a renewed focus on well-being. In some cases, it might increase our ability to be more personalized with our customers, or it might give us more free time to innovate. What organizations are choosing to do with this new capacity is going to vary greatly. GenAI probably will also open doors we haven't even imagined yet. However, with this great power does come great responsibility. Embracing generative AI doesn't mean ignoring the potential for some human jobs to be replaced. History has shown us that with every technological leap, there have been new jobs that emerge. There have been new skills and new ways of thinking developed. The key to finding opportunity in this disruption is to anticipate the changes to human work and prepare for them ethically and responsibly. That's a lot of the time that myself and my colleagues spend thinking about this topic and how to help organizations think about different ways we can elevate humans with this great new technology. The preparation for disruption also involves being adaptable, rethinking what learning means, redefining our relationship with technology. I think understanding the future of work shouldn't be AI versus humans, it's AI with humans. And so I do believe the future of work can be a bright one, but it requires vision, leadership, and a commitment to navigate this transformation thoughtfully and responsibly. I could talk all day on this topic, but I'd like to now hand it over to Audrey Ancione, our AI Institute leader, who's going to ask you a few polling questions and then introduce our panelists.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing your thoughts. And yes, definitely looking to your piece of thought leadership on the topic. So before I introduce to you our panelists, we'd love to ask you 2 key questions. We'd love to understand how you believe GenAI will impact your workforce. So our first question for you today is an agreement question. We'd love to understand to what extent you agree that working with AI technologies will enhance the performance and job satisfaction of your workforce. Tell us if you agree or disagree with this question, and to what extent. We'll open the poll. Atif, for me, the poll looks closed, so maybe you can reopen it.
It's working.
Oh, fantastic. We're going to give you a few more seconds. We'll see your response, and then we'll move to our second polling question. Let's share the results, Atef. All right, more people agreeing than disagreeing. We've got, I guess, in strong agreement, 18% of you, I guess a 7, close to 30%. So we can say almost half of you believe that the impact is towards the strongly agree. But still, there are some of you that need to be convinced about the real and true potential. Let's ask you a second question here, which is, if you do agree that there is some positive impact to infusing GenAI in the workforce, how ready is your organization? We'd love to understand the level of readiness that you believe you or your organization have. So what's your level of readiness? Tell us on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is you're perfectly ready to embrace this change and infuse trustworthy GenAI into everything you do. All right, perhaps we can see the results. This is more mixed, right? This is more mixed. Yes, we do have a majority that are in the middle, 25%, but it's all over the place, from being very ready with almost 19% of you to, not being ready at all, with 1s and 2s. And the results from our human capital survey earlier this year are that less than 22% of organizations say they're ready to infuse. On the opposite end, most organizations do agree. Actually, 82% of our respondents, they recognize that employees truly believe AI technologies will enhance their job performance and job satisfaction. So there's clearly a dichotomy between desirability of technology and helping us take away redundant tasks, help with our performance and our wellness, and then the actual organization's ability to redesign the work, the tasks, the roles, to be able to effectively do that. So today we're going to talk about this dichotomy with our panelists and to try to understand what are both enablers and challenges to infusing generative AI in the workforce. I am so pleased to introduce our panelists to you today. I want to start with Pamela O'Kimmett. Pam, she is the Chief Human Resource Officer, CHRO, of Manulife Financial Corporation. Pam is responsible for overseeing the company's global human resources and communications function. Prior to joining Manulife as the CHRO in October 2018, Pam previously served as the CHRO of Cardinal Health, Coca-Cola Enterprises, the Bear Stearns Companies, and Lucent Technologies. She also held a range of strategic HR roles at Citigroup and General Motors. As an active member of the human resources industry, Pam serves as chair of the HR Policy Association. She also serves on the boards for the Center for Advanced Human Resources Studies at Cornell University, the Center for Executive Succession at the University of South Carolina, and the National Academy of Human Resources. Pam, we thank you for your presence today. Our next panelist is Dalia Kendick. Dalia is the head of digital HR for Thomson Reuters. She leads the HR digital team focused on technology solutions to simplify, automate, and enable Thomson Reuters as a leader in digital employee experience. Dalia has over 18 years of experience as an accomplished strategic partner focused on delivering digital HR technology solutions, process efficiency, and an optimized employee experience with agile HR solutions that can adapt and respond to the needs of the business workforce. Dalia has a strong passion for data-driven insights, service delivery, and automated advanced technology experiences in the digital workplace. Dalia, welcome to our panel. Last but not least, Sabine Hirji. Sabine is an executive advisor at Deloitte Canada. She is the former CHRO and former group executive at RBC. She is a preeminent advocate and spokesperson for diversity and inclusion in Canadian businesses. And she has received numerous awards for championing the advancement of women and minorities. Sabine was listed on the 2001 edition of Who's Who in Canadian Business and the 2009 edition of Canadian Who's Who. In 2017, she received the Ivey Business School Lifetime Achievement Award in HR industry. In 2011 and 2014, she was named one of the top 25 women of influence by the Women of Influence organization, and she was included into that organization's Canada's Most Powerful Women Top 100 Hall of Fame in 2012. Sabine, we are delighted to have you with us today. All right. Let me now start by sharing with our audience the questions that we'll go through today. I will share those questions in advance so that you can proactively think about the questions you have for our audience. In about half an hour, we'll open it up to your questions. So I'm going to ask our three panelists here about three themes mostly. The influence of generative AI on jobs, roles, and the workforce culture. Secondly, we'll start thinking about how to successfully integrate GenAI to drive business value and what that looks like, as well as what needs to be true for that to happen. And then we'll time travel. We'll travel to 2028, and I'll be asking our panelists to describe the workforce in 2028. What does it look like to work in this environment? All right, let's start with theme one, and with you, Pam, if you don't mind. Manulife has over 40,000 employees, serving over 34 million customers around the globe. When you think about the workforce at Manulife, how do you see GenAI impacting the workforce? Some view GenAI as a paradigm shift, another way of thinking completely. Others view it more as a tool that can incrementally increase productivity, just like many other tools before. Pam, what's your perspective on GenAI and its impact on the workforce?
Well, first off, thank you so much. Apologies for me being slightly tardy. You know how that goes. I wish I had like a GenAI clone so I could have left that person in the meeting that I was tardy in and joined. But I'm really pleased to have the chance to participate in today's discussion because it's such an important topic. And I suspect with the speed at which it's evolved in just this year alone, it's going to continue to be one that we'll want to have a lot of dialogue about and to share practices and thinking with each other. I would tell you a couple things. When coming out of Davos, my CEO was pretty jazzed about generative AI specifically, and really wanting to challenge us, as our board was. And I think it's important to recognize that we were getting a pull from sort of both levels. And so we put a squad together of individuals, and we really tried to unconstrain our thinking about what we would do with it. And so, yes, for sure, we're going to look at it as a productivity enhancement tool. We are not preordaining how it could replace work, but we are open to all portfolio of things. And so currently we have a number of pilots and experiments underway so that we can really study and learn as we go and understand what are some of the things that we need to watch out for. For example, as simple as the Microsoft Copilot, we have a number of colleagues that are piloting it across the organization at different levels, different role types, different geographies. And there's a lot of rich learning already coming from something like that. We have several coding pilots going on. We have several revenue generating co-pilots or pilots, going on as well. So we're trying to look at it from a number of angles. And I would say that from our view, we do believe it's going to have a big influence on our organization, on jobs and roles. But I'm most keenly worried about its implications for our culture. Because right now people are excited and curious, but understandably and equally anxious about what it
Yes.
means. And it's so early in our experimentation phase, we would be making up some declaration to say, well, it won't impact people's jobs, or it won't impact what we do, where we do it, how we do it. So we're really landing more on talking about what Gen AI is, what it isn't, giving people opportunities to just learn more about it, using these individuals who are in pilots to be ambassadors to talk about how it's being used. And we're finally incubating our at least first round of responsible AI usage, so we can have a bit of a statement, a Magna Carta, a charter of some sort to share with our colleagues about how we're approaching it at this juncture, because it's really important to us that we're authentic to our colleagues, don't want to scare, want to excite, but also want to be very transparent and authentic about what's ahead.
Fantastic. I love that you're doing that in such a transparent way and with a learning mindset approach, Pam. And you've talked a lot about exploring and learning and sharing those insights. Really, thank you for those perspectives. Let's turn it over to you, Dalia. At Thomson Reuters, there are over 25,000 team members in hundreds of locations worldwide. And given your industry and the scope of Thomson Reuters, we can say that many of your employees are knowledge workers. When we think about the impact of GenAI, a lot of us think about, the ability to reinvent knowledge work, given GenAI's ability to synthesize, retrieve, and make use of a ton of information and data points. What are your perspectives on GenAI's impact for your workforce?
Yeah, well, thank you, Audrey, and hi, everyone, and thanks for having me as part of the panel today. And I can't echo what Pam just shared, right? I think Thomson Reuters is on a very similar journey of exploration, experimentation, and just, the art of kind of the curiosity that goes along with that. Yes. It's still very much early days, but, lots of exciting things that are happening. And at Thomson Reuters, AI is not new to us. There's been many examples of AI embedded into our internal and external products. I think GenAI is making us rethink work, and it's allowing our colleagues to think creatively about the art of the possible, and empowering, quite frankly, a human-centered design approach in delivering better experiences in our products and making behind-the-scene workflow and processes just that much more efficient by really looking at use cases where there maybe friction, right? Whether that's internally or externally with our colleagues or customers. If we can automate and simplify those tasks, this gives us much more time to be customer facing and do less of that back-end work. So those things that I'm talking about are the repetitive and routine tasks that many of us experience day to day that take us away from that value add and that more exciting work that I think everybody wants to get to. There's so much. And as you can see, end of the year, time is just flying. It's never on our side. So there's really a mix of excitement and exploration into the art of the possible. And it's important for us to get people involved in that. So at Thomson Reuters, doing a lot of training, doing a lot of education, understanding how best to use AI and not boiling the ocean, but rather picking use cases that make the most sense, experimenting with them, learning from each other. And continuing to scale. So we've kicked off several initiatives with cross-collaboration teams, thinking through how best AI can augment work. And this exploration is helping us shape and prioritize where we think AI can be most effective in augmenting our work. So a very exciting time for our workforce, for sure.
Love it. And Dalia, could you give us maybe one or two examples of prioritized use cases?
Yeah, I think, internally, like Pam shared, we're also a Microsoft customer. So we've gotten early design and early partnering with Microsoft Copilot. GitHub is another Copilot that we're exploring with our product engineers. A lot of our SaaS vendors that we work with, as you can see, the technology is exploding and there's lots of capabilities across many of those vendor platform tools. So we're experimenting with them as well internally. And then externally, we've just recently launched a whole bunch of new product offerings. I think in November, we launched an announcement that Thomson Reuters has embedded GenAI into with an AI assisted research capability into our Westlaw Precision product. And that makes, better, faster answers to complex research questions drawn from industry's most comprehensive collection of editorial enhanced content. We've got a new GenAI assistant that connects all of our TR generative AI products, building off our case text product as two examples. And then finally, in practical law, we introduced a new GenAI capability where our customers can benefit from an AI conversational chat type new interface. So a lot of exciting stuff.
Fantastic. Congratulations on those launches. And we'll dig more as the panel unfolds on how you made it successful and how you're going to take that forward. For now, I'd love your take, Sabine, on, is this a paradigm shift? Is this an incremental productivity boost? How do you view GenAI as an accomplished, as an experienced human resources executive and professional?
Thank you for having me, Audrey. And the perspective that I'll bring is really certainly through my from my professional role, but from the clients that I engage with at Deloitte across all sectors, public sector and private sector. And in fact, we just had a really great conversation this morning with a group of about 15 CHROs across all sectors on this very topic. So fresh from there. I would definitely echo much of what has been said already. So let me try to be a little bit additive here as opposed to repetitive. One of the things, and Pam, I think, alluded to that, is there is a bit of an elephant in the room. While there's a lot of excitement around the potential, at the back of the minds of many people is this concern, anxiety of the unknown. What's this going to do to jobs? What's this going to do to my job? And so I'd like to just zoom out a bit on the really big picture here. There's a lot of research that's been done around impact on jobs, and it's anticipated that about 300 million jobs will be impacted. And that's one side of the story. What we're saying about those jobs is that a certain percentage, by and large, it's a certain percentage of those jobs that can be automated through the use of AI. Now, that includes a lot of tasks that we hate doing, that most people, the mundane, repetitive, not really purposeful work that people would much rather do away with. And, I use often the example of just our smartphones, where they're very much, there are co-pilots. They're not actually, they're doing things we don't really want to do ourselves. They're keeping things organized. They're helping us stay on track. They're recommending, the next activities. They're correcting our spelling. They're doing all kinds of things that make us more productive and take away that mundane work. But what's also critical in terms of the other side of the story is that there will be millions of new jobs created. And so the conversation for organizations is really around how are we going to help employees to make that transition, to learn new skills, to really be very much part of the journey, so that we end up at a place where it's a win-win for everyone, for our employees, for our clients, and for our organizations. And that's certainly where much of the conversation is starting to move.
Love that.
Sorry?
Love that. Thank you. And I think you have a perspective also on the impact GenAI will have on hierarchies. Can you share with us your thoughts on how to think about the shape of the workforce as well? Yeah,
for sure. The AI is going to make, it's very democratized. It's Gen AI is very easy to use. You don't need coding skills. We will need to get good at natural language prompting, and that's something that there'll be a test and learn around. But it is really going to give employees superpowers that make them more productive, that give them easy access to knowledge, that allow them to solve problems faster and to do that higher value work. And so if you flip to culture and hierarchy, one of the things that we saw during the pandemic, in fact, it's something that's been evolving over time, but we continue to see a breakdown of and a transition from hierarchies of levels to hierarchy of knowledge.
Mhm.
There's a lot of employee agency because they have access to that information and that knowledge. And what's important for organizations, I think, is to continue that trend that we saw of really working with teams, working with individuals in that way, which is where is the source of knowledge, not going through the hierarchy. And this is what happens in a crisis. This is why it happened during the pandemic. I come from financial services. This is what happened during the financial crisis, is because of the importance of speed. Let's get to the point. Doesn't matter where the answers come from, where the information comes from. And so this deliberate work at breaking down hierarchies, not just on paper, but actually how work gets done, who is in the room to make those decisions. So culture, as you raise here, is super important, and both Dalia and Pam touched on transparency. Couldn't underscore that more. We need to bring employees with us. We need to be open and honest. We need to be balanced about all the opportunities and some of the challenges. And we need to build trust and the relationship where employees feel that we will work with them, we will be honest, we will support them through the transition. But nobody knows where it's going to be at the other end. But this whole idea of let's do this together, let's be open and honest, let's bring the water cooler conversations, or the virtual water cooler conversations, or dinner table conversations into the workplace, and talk about this and move forward in a productive way.
Perfect. Sounds good. Sabine, Pam, Dalia, I'm taking away the need to bring transparency, to educate our workforce, do this in a collaborative fashion, and also use some more traditional techniques, like using ambassadors, people who participate in a pilot and then become our ambassadors. So there's a mix of new and old techniques that we can apply here to make this a success. I'd love now to focus on how to drive business value, and would love to double click with the three of you in actual applications. So Pam, I'm wondering if you could share with our audience, you touched at a high level on some, co-pilots that are happening across the globe. I wonder if you could share maybe some that relate more to the world of HR, or to the world of hiring, managing, and retaining talent. Are there some use cases that you're thinking or that you've already implemented in the world of HR?
Yes, actually. And it's been kind of fun because oftentimes, as you know, with new technologies, we apply them in the rest of the business and we don't get the opportunity to leverage them sometimes for ourselves. But Sabine said it well, this is very democratized. And so it's already, I think, proving to be quite helpful. In some of the obvious areas, we are looking at it in hiring, really prompting hiring managers as well as their own direct team, but especially hiring managers with interview guides, questions to frame based on the role or this particular spec that the person is trying to fill. So we're doing some early prep work there. In the offer discussions, we have a lot of different information being in a regulated space, and there's the opportunity for us to help assimilate all the different sets of information that we need about a candidate in order to expedite that both background check and other types of approval processes that we need to go through. Again, it sounds a little mundane, but that takes a lot of work away for the recruiter or the recruiter's assistant, so that the recruiter can be meeting more talent, talking to more people, really adding that higher order value of judgment and their expertise. In a more boring area, we sit atop a lot of information, and I also have communications responsibility. And there's just a plethora of policies and procedures and what we call moments that matter, guideposts, and information for managers. And keeping all of that information current, accurate, and aligned has been so difficult to do from a human level. So we've started already using AI to help go out and ensure that we're better cataloging it, keeping it current, sunsetting old materials and things like that. So that is an enormous time saver, even though it's rather mundane. We're also looking at how we can leverage it. We have a group called Ask HR, which would be sort of our broad-based way of providing coaching and support to managers. So we're looking at ways to automate aspects of that so that it's really more tier zero, but much more dynamic service than what I might call the blunt instrument of old-fashioned AI kind of prompts and things like that, so that it can be a bit more situational and more tailored to giving that kind of coaching to the leader. We're also looking inside some of our talent preparation of talent data, talent calibration, some of our other things to see if we can quickly do analysis and summary data from that. Workday has certain tools. We're trying to we use like many of colleagues, I think we use a distributed set of tools. So trying to aggregate there. The one that I'm really more eager for us to tap into is around the learning side of things. Obviously, we've had some basic tools that pay attention, kind of a la Netflix. You watch this, you do this, you might want to suggest this. It might help guide you on a particular skill capability pillar that you want to pursue. But I'm more eager in how it can really transform what we do for real-time learning interventions for managers. So we're more exploring opportunities there, because leadership programs are so expensive. And so we're trying to figure out what can we do to disintermediate, but also provide more value there, because we think the manager is at the front line of great disruption. So those are just a few things that are scratching the surface. I will say we're constantly vexed with how do we make sure we're not tripping over DEI or inclusion issues with any of the tools that we're considering. And that one, I think, is an evolution for us, because we're just trialing and experimenting in any of the things I've mentioned, besides record keeping.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pam. I love how all of those will enable your recruiters, your talent specialists to actually spend more time interacting and connecting with other human beings, and driving some value, some value in the extra time they've now recovered. Really appreciate you also talking about the considerations that you have from a risk perspective, and making sure that you balance the benefits with also some of the risk. Thanks for that holistic perspective. Dalia, let's turn it over to you at Thomson Reuters. Like you're already incorporating GenAI into some products. I wonder if you could talk to us about how you increased your readiness. We spoke about the low level of readiness. Only 22% of organizations feel ready to infuse GenAI. What can you talk to us about your tips, your advice for building that readiness?
Yeah, I think, anyone going through this journey, if you haven't already done this, it's really aligning on the principles, like what does AI mean to you, right? In terms of the ethics and the responsible use of AI. And so early on, I think that was probably one of the key important first steps in terms of establishing some responsible use guidelines that frankly align very nicely with our Thomson Reuters trust principles. So I think, making sure that people are aware of what, how to use it, how best to use it, when should I use it, and taking those precautionary steps. Because as we've heard of all the stories around, AI is not great for all use cases. And we definitely want to make sure, especially in these early days, we want to be sure that we're validating, we're experimenting, but we're also thoughtful in terms of, when to best to, take what AI might be suggesting, validating that. But, at the end of the day, this is why we say AI can augment right now. But the human is at the center of that, making those strategic problem solving, critical thinking skills. So I think that's a big one. Then we've all talked about sharing and educating, right? So, as I reflect back on 2023, we've done a lot of experimentation. We've allowed employees to embrace tools, getting early adoption into just using those tools and sharing those stories. We've done some hackathons, some challenges internally, to get people thinking about use cases. We've dedicated learning days this year and probably continue to do that in 2024, all centered around these topics. And it wasn't kind of a push down approach. This was our colleagues sharing experiences with each other, and how best we could all support each other through a collaborative, more agile approach to using AI. And I think for us going into 2024, I think, things that we were already on our talent strategy, like skills, like suggesting skills. I think what Pam's talking about in terms of just that experience that we want to drive across our colleague moments that matter, things like suggested learning. How do we just get better at those different use cases? I think is going to be key, as well as making sure that we have an eye on skill development and upskill and reskill development. What are those identified critical skills that might change the way we work, and leveraging that to do much more skill building across our workforce.
Love that. Thanks for that, Dalia. Sabine, what is your take on how organizations can take advantage of generative AI to create value for their employees, their clients, and the community?
Yeah, great. Thank you. In fact, just I mentioned we were together this morning, and some of our colleagues at Deloitte were talking about a couple of the tools that we use. So I'll share those. One is what we call Gen D, which essentially is our internal, it's our internal chat GPT to really simplify it. And that, of course, is done to help with the security and really keep all of that tightly in-house. And what that does is it allows people to experiment, to play, to look at how they're going to boost their productivity. And I think we're all familiar with many of the things that can be done: summarizing, content and data generation, searching. And just in the last week, it's interesting. Some of our colleagues were working with me on preparing for this session, and my question was, "Oh, have you actually run that through Gen D?" And it was, "Oh no, I hadn't really thought about that." And 5 minutes later, I had exactly what I needed. The 2 pages turned into a very, into a short paragraph. And then I went in there and applied my judgment to make small tweaks and changes before actually using it. But that's been great. One of the interesting things to track there is to see who's using it. Because in some organizations, utilization of more senior people is actually a lot lower. And we do need everybody to experiment, to learn from this. The other example was is a tool called Workforce Analyzer. And in a nutshell, what it does is it looks at all of the jobs or the roles in an organization, which are broken down into tasks. And through, and I'm not going to cover it in all of the detail, but essentially through using that task-based data, what it does is it gives you the output that it provides you through the prompts that you put in is at an enterprise level to be able to see what is the impact going to be, what percentage of jobs will be impacted by GenAI, and how much, or what is the range of the job that's going to be impacted. So just hypothetical numbers, it might say 70% of jobs are going to be impacted, and of those, 50% are going to be impacted 20%, to 30%, and the other 50 is 30 to 50%. And what that allows is, first of all, an enterprise picture, and it's a directional. It's not precise, but it's good direction. And then what are the skills that we're going to need to build, to upskill, so that people can transition to other kind of work. So it makes it much more data-based, and of course uses GenAI to help us with the impacts of GenAI. And the third one I would share, which organizations are doing, is this idea of a talent marketplace. Again, it's very much related to a skills-based organization. And so how do you start to build an understanding of the skills that employees have, the skills that we need? And through that talent marketplace, there's, of course, the opportunities for internal talent mobility by matching the skills, but also to be able to, because we're talking about task-based activities as well, to allow, make it easier for people to get to participate on a project or to do certain kind of work if they're interested in building certain skills. And also, if the organization is looking for certain skills, because the value creation, which I guess is your question here, really comes from us being able to optimally use the skills that people have, while at the same time to be optimally helping them to develop new skills, because you need to do the skills that you're using today is about today. The skills that you're building for the future is about your performance in the future. So for me, the promise of a talent marketplace is one that I think we'll see more and more organizations tapping into. And it's hard work. There's no question. It's hard work to break it down into skills, but one that is essential to be able to also respond and act with speed and agility as opportunities come up for organizations.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I was going to talk about the velocity, right? We cannot rely on 5-year plan for workforce planning anymore. It's got to be a lot more agile and fast than that. So thanks for highlighting those examples, Sabine. Really appreciate those. And thanks for your transparency on you using GenD, our own ChatGPT, to produce some of your notes. I appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
Now, with the three of you, I'd love to travel to 25 years from now, 2028. Why do we do that? Just to not think about today's barriers. Let's imagine that this technology has been widely accepted and successfully embedded. It's in the DNA. Pam, you were talking about culture. So I would love for you to describe to me what you're seeing in 2028. Can you describe to me a day in the life of a Manulife team member in 2028? Or perhaps share your thoughts on, more broadly, what would work look like in 2028?
Well, it's an interesting exercise because I hope I'm like out on a sunny beach in 2028 enjoying things and saying, wow, isn't this wonderful? And that's a little bit of a metaphor for part of the conjecture that we have. And these are just really ideas that we're still twirling with. We may think very differently about the location of work and where we choose to source individuals, because if we can have certain things done differently, that may allow us to open up our lens a bit. And what am I really saying? There's sort of two ends of the spectrum. We're wondering about the need, to Sabine's point about skills. We're wondering if we can continue to leverage these tools to give people skill enhancement and teach people skills. Will people continue to really think there's an economic value equation to go to a 4-year university? Will we not just be able to be recruiting people from quote high school or upper grades and bringing them into the organization? And so part of our theory is, what should we be thinking about on that side of the equation, and where should we start some experiments or some points of view about that? At the other end of the spectrum, we have a belief as a business, since we're in the spirit of hoping to help people live a longer, healthier life. we have a strong conviction actuarially that people are going to live till 100. That is not fanciful at all. And so we're starting to also challenge ourselves to say a few years out, we ought to put our money where our mouth is, and we ought to be leveraging, shall we say, more senior workers, people that may want to have a different sense of what career means at that stage. They still want to have purpose, they still have skills and value to add. And so would AI and chat GPT, this generative AI, really allow us to leverage them in some other ways too. So those are sort of two challenges that we have for ourselves, which is to say, do we start to think differently about what a job and a career means with us? And that's the sort of broader question that we're still really rolling around with. Gig workers were super popular to talk about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and that never really came to the fruition everybody predicted it would. We're wondering now, to pull on the skills thread that Sabine set up, are we going to think differently about that? And in that broader marketplace, have a portfolio of people that we know and have relationships with and have verified skills, and draw upon them as we have certain needs for things, as opposed to, so do we need an ongoing marketing team of the full scope we have today? Would we draw upon people to do certain things? Same for communications, same for even some of our underwriting. So there's a range of ways that we might think differently about things. So I know that's not a specific answer of what life is like sitting here and being a Manulifer in 2028, but those are some of the things that we're challenging ourselves. One final footnote, and this is my own personal fear, the radical transparency that these tools provide in terms of documenting everything that we say, every keystroke that we've done, really capturing a lot of our thoughts as we manifest them in conversation or in written word, is wonderful. But I also worry, what are the implications for culture? Because are people going to be supremely anxious about what they say, how they say it, not to have anything taken out of turn, not to do an untoward joke or a contextual thing, et cetera, that might get lost in the frame of the technology capturing it? And will we lose that kind of openness that we have today when people know that sort of they're on record, a sort of the Minority Report concept, right? And so that's one watch out that is just sort of percolating in the background for us too, because we think our culture of transparency and collaboration is a really powerful tool for us, and we don't want to lose that.
Thanks for sharing both your hopes, Pam, and your fears very transparently. Really appreciate that. Dalia, you and I spoke in advance of this webcast, and you shared your thoughts on your hopes for GenAI and its impact on silos, breaking silos. Can you explain your perspective and why you're an optimist?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what Pam just shared. I truly hope that, as we look into the future, that we are breaking down silos, and building much more of the concept of diverse teams that work together based on skill sets that they have. I think any organization, we often don't think of the end user, right? We're building is a great example where, how do we bring much more of that voice of the colleague or the customer into the design? And that requires diverse thinking. But sometimes I feel we still kind of operate in these silos, right? And there shouldn't be. If we're all focused on critical key skills, then that brings that human touch together. And if we can lean on that human touch to do some of what Pam's fears are, right? Which are all the things of, communicating, sense of connection, collaboration, all of those things that we're starting to try to get back as everyone's returning to work and potentially working in offices. How do we bring that to the surface in a lot of the work that we're doing? And I think, to me, it's, a step into that progress is breaking down some of those silos and just, opening up based on people's hearts, minds, skills, the right conversations that will actually move the needle and create that value.
Thanks, Dalia. I want to turn over to you, Sabine, for the last question, but also want to remind our audience to post their questions if they have any for our panelists. while people type up their question, Zabine, I'd love for you to share with us what needs to be true for organizations to successfully infuse GenAI into their organization. What's your advice to people listening in today?
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps it's a little bit of a summary. It's think co-pilot, augmentation, human and machine. Not just transparency, but engaging employees, learning together, failing together, sharing. Dalia talked about how they've really built in not just the experimentation, but the sharing. And let's build a culture where people are excited and feel responsible to be building that knowledge. One of my hopes is that some of the time savings that's achieved is actually shared with employees, with workers, and in the area of the number of hours that people work. We know that that many people work much longer than their official number of hours. We've looked at automation for decades as a holy grail to some extent to help with that, and haven't quite got there. But is this our chance to be able to do that with shorter work weeks, with different kind of flexibility, with just ways that allows more time and well-being focus for individuals. Human skills, absolutely essential. We touched on them throughout. I think the rise of the human skills that we've been talking about for some time is at an inflection point, whether it's the sort of harder human skills like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, curiosity, etc., but the social skills of communication, collaboration, empathy, influence. And while I do hear that there's a lot that we're doing in this space that can build collaboration, at the same time, and this is the thing, there's always two sides to the coin. It can also reduce collaboration because employees, we no longer need to go and talk to somebody about something or getting the information because we're getting it through AI. So really being deliberate about that collaboration. And I love Satya Nadella at Microsoft. One of his beliefs is that the source of all innovation is empathy, the most humane quality we all have. And my desire and hope is that we keep that at the center of this human design that we're talking about, and really, really flex our empathy muscle.
Love that, Zabine. Yes, I do hope that we use that a lot more in the future, as we can rely on machines to do other things. I'd love to respond to the question we had in the Q&A and ask you, Pam, and you, Dalia, to comment from your Manulife and Thomson Reuters perspective. When we think about GenAI, we often think about a push and a pull, right, between the AI or IT teams and the business teams. What is your experience, Pam and Dalia, at Manulife and Thomson Reuters? Is it more the AI and IT teams pushing, or is there more of a pull from the business? Who's driving?
Well, in our case, we have a cross-functional team, and the executive leadership team is very plugged into what this team is considering and doing. So we take inputs from across the entire spectrum of the business, from functions, from line organizations, broadly across the globe too. So we've been really, really broad in how we've done it, and are doing a lot with our sort of next layer of leadership to make sure they're aware of the different cases that are being trialed, so that can incubate more ideas from everybody. So we've been very broad about how we've approached it. There is a little watch out because it takes a lot of computing power and it's expensive. So we have to be somewhat mindful of those things. But we do try to be really broad and comprehensive.
So a team sport at Manulife, it sounds like. Dalia, what about your experience? Who drives?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. It's, you know, it's a cross collaboration team. I don't think there's a much more a weigh in against who's pulling or who's pushing. I think there's a nice balance, right? So when it comes to kind of all the things that you would think about in terms of ethics and responsibility, obviously that's more of a push, just aligned to our overall security and principles and all of those things. But you know, the pull is really coming from the business. Like you know, it's our colleagues and our business leaders that are embracing kind of the art of the possible to really think of those use cases and using that, quite frankly, as a lever to prioritize, right? What are the biggest gains that we can use from this, and then using that as an opportunity to rebuild, you know, planning. So I think it's a healthy mix across.
Fantastic. So true collaboration. There's one more question from the same audience member. Do you see jobs breaking down into skills and people coming to an organization that may work across different departments rather than one department? So the focus of this webcast was not on the skills-based organization, although it's a great idea. But how do you see your respective organizations, I guess, moving to a skills-based organization? Can we have your thoughts there? Pam, do you want to start?
Sure. I'd say, you know, we're in the business of mitigating risk, so we're probably not going to be the earliest adopter to go hard over into totally skills based, given some of the oversight and things that we have in terms of the unanswered question for us is, you can catalog what the skills are, but how do you adjudicate the level of the skills? And so that's a question for us to really get whole on, to understand. And then from a hierarchy and an accountability framework, you know, thinking of wearing my risk mitigation hat as an enterprise, trying to understand, if we were so transversal, how that would really work to ensure that we had the right controls in place to evidence to the different regulatory bodies how we do our work, and leave that trail. So those are a couple of questions that sort of twirl us right now in thinking, are we going to go all the way over to a skills-based organization just yet?
Thanks for that, Pam. Dalia?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's still early days, right, in terms of thinking through, you know, a shift to a skills-based org. But what it highlights for me is just the focus on internal growth and development for our employees. You know, and we already kind of do this today. Like, there's tons of projects, there's tons of opportunities across different business functions. But the ability to then, you know, not think of a traditional hierarchy or a career path, but rather, you know, how do I gain experiences from different, whether they're gigs, whether they're just, you know, a bit of a rotation into different projects. I think for me, that's really where I see value from employees gaining skills by actually applying different skills into experimenting in different projects and then gaining that and walking away from that to build up those skills. So to me, I feel like that's an area that we definitely want to continue to promote. I think Sabine talked about a talent marketplace, right? Where you can kind of, you know, express interest in different things, understand what skills you need, and then match that up with potential, not just movement of roles, but also some gig work or some, you know, project work.
Fantastic. Dalia, Sabine, thank you so much for being with us today, sharing your thoughts on the impact of generative AI on the workforce, traveling with me through time, trying to envision where we might be 5 years from now, how we might work, how we might interact, and also the pitfalls to avoid, right? Where we don't want to go. I appreciate your candor and reflections. And I want to share with the audience our next webcast in January, on January 25th, will be dedicated to climate change, AI, GenAI, analytics to help with climate change. So if you're interested in ESG and some of the things that are unfolding right now at Co-op 28 and how the technology might help, do tune in, do register. Again, a big thank you to the three of you, Pam, Dalia, Sabine, and Tara, for kicking us off on this very important topic. And I'm sure we will continue exchanging ideas on the topic. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for tuning in.